There are only two segments here: user development fee or UDF and CUT charges. I'm sure a lot of you might recollect these names from a ticket. So this is just an example ticket where CUT charges is approximately 50 rupees and user development another 200 rupees. CUT stands for Common Usage Terminal Equipment. Now say you enter the airport, you print your boarding pass, and using the boarding pass, when you are actually boarding the plane, it is scanned. So those machines that are used to print and scan your boarding pass are examples of the common usage terminal equipment. So hello everyone, my name is Shantanu Bauri and today we will be discussing about the business of airports. So I'll come to the title of today's presentation in a few slides, but before I begin with my presentation, please take note of the upcoming FOF dates. The next FOF is scheduled to be on the 15th of Jan, which will be followed by 19th February's FOF. So the main objective behind my presentation is to help you build a framework as to how you would analyze an airport business. So there are a couple of airport businesses listed in India. There's GMR Airport, which is a pure play airport entity, and then there's Adani Airport, which is a part of a holding company, which is Adani Enterprises. I'll begin my presentation with a quote by Warren Buffett. So he said, in an inflationary world, a toll bridge would be a great thing to own because you have laid out the capital costs, you have built it in old dollars, and you don't have to keep replacing it. This makes absolute sense, but this can also be used as a mental model. I came across this idea in one of the blogs by Professor Bakshi, where he said, I don't want to be a toll bridge, I want to be its meaning. Now, instead of me explaining how this mental model will work, I'll show you this one picture I generated using AI. So this is a representation of the Bandra Worli Sea Link. Now imagine you are approaching this bridge from the side of Bandra, and instead of paying toll tax, you're paying something called as airport tariffs. And at the end of the bridge, instead of getting off at Worli, say you are getting onto a plane and that plane is flying you to your desired destination. Simply, that is a business model of an airport, to connect you as a passenger to your aeroplane, which will fly you to your desired destination. Hence the topic for the day, from toll bridge to aero bridge. So before discussing the business of airports, I'll lay the stage. I'll talk about the history of airports first. Currently, there are approximately 157 airports, as you can see in the second column in 2024. 10 years ago, there were only 74 airports, but the government aims to increase this number to as high as 240 airports by 2030 and further increase it to 400 airports by 2047. This is an infographic I came across which lists the top 10 airports of the world. Uh, as you can see towards the top left, we have the largest airport of the world, Atlanta, US. Say they managed approximately 11 crore passengers in the calendar year 2024. Among them, we also have one Indian airport, which is the New Delhi airport, handling approximately 7.8 crore passengers during calendar year 2024. Looking at only the Indian numbers, so in totality in FY25, India handled approximately 40 crore passengers. And among the top 5 airports are, firstly, obviously the Delhi airport, handling approximately 20% passengers, as you can see in the yellow line, which is followed by the Mumbai airport, handling another 13%, followed by Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai airports, handling 10, 7, and 5% respectively. So among them, the fastest growing airports are Bangalore and Hyderabad, who have grown at a 10-year CAGR of approximately 10%, while the slowest one of them, as far as growth is concerned, is the Mumbai airport, growing at only 4%, mainly because of the size constraints that they are facing. Looking at only the international passengers as a subset of total passengers. So in India, a total of 7.7 crore international passengers traveled during FY25, roughly 15 to 20%. If I look at the top two airports in this segment, which is again Delhi and Mumbai, collectively they have handled 50%. And if I look at the next three airports, which is Chennai, Bangalore, and Cochin International Airport, they have collectively handled another 22%. Hence, the top 5 airports have collectively handled 70% of the total international passengers as far as FY25 is concerned. And the similar trend has been observed previously as well. Staying in this topic, if I look at airport level data, international passenger as a percentage of total passengers has been somewhere between 15 to 20% for most of the airports, and it reduces as we go down the airports. But there are few exceptions. For example, airports in Kerala. So Cochin International Airport, for instance, has a 47% rate when it comes to international passengers as a subset of total passengers, and that is simply because of their structural reason, where in the 80s a lot of Keralites migrated abroad, mainly in the Middle East, in search of jobs, and since then the travel has continued. So now coming to the history of airports across the world with a special focus on Indian airports. So before the 70s, airports were treated like a public utility. Their main objective was to provide aeronautical services only. What is aeronautical service? Any service which is very essential for you as a passenger to board the aeroplane, take off and land in another airport. Just a simple example would be parking of airplanes or even access to the runways. And airports were mainly operated by the regulators. In India's case, it was DGCA. But during the 70s and the 80s, a global trend was observed where airports started to corporatize and commercialize. There were a lot of different reasons why this took place, but the two important ones are to make the individual airport very sustainable in themselves, so that government does not have to uh, infuse cash every now and then. And secondly, if the airports make enough profits, government can use the excess proceeds to fund construction of other airports as well. So in India, during the 90s, the government formed an authority called Airport Authority of India, who was responsible as a company to operate all the airports in India, at least most of the airports in India. And similar trend was also observed across the world. So for instance, BAA, which stands for British Airport Authority, so they were formed in Britain in 1966 with similar objectives. And AINA, which is the Spanish equivalent, they were incorporated somewhere in the 90s, again having similar objectives. And during the late 80s and onwards, we saw another step in this direction where airports started to privatize. So in 1987, we saw the first major privatization in the form of IPO of BAA, the British Airport Authority. And in India, the first privatization happened in 1995 when the construction of Cochin International Airport was done by a joint venture between the state government, who funded approximately 30 to 40% of the proceeds, and the remaining came from NRIs of Kerala, the residents of Kerala, and a few corporates. So, but formally, privatization happened only in the 2000s, where a proper public-private partnership framework was designed. It had a few salient features that I'll enlist. Firstly, there were two kinds of joint ventures. So, there was a greenfield joint venture, which means building an airport ground up, and then there was a brownfield joint venture, which basically means that an airport is already in place and just the operation is outsourced to a private operator. Another important thing is that firstly this agreement will be called a concession agreement, and it will have a period to it. So concession period as per the original framework was approximately 30 years, which can be extended with another 30 years. So in total 60. And you wouldn't get to run the airport for free. You will have to pay something. So that's called a concession fee, which is paid annually. It is kind of a royalty. And as per the original framework, concession fee was calculated as a percentage of revenue, could go as high as 45% in case of Delhi. We'll talk about that in a few slides. And finally, there was a bidding in place, which was a proper format of bidding I'll talk about in the next slide. So there were a few ground rules here. Firstly, a novice cannot go and bid for an airport. You will have to have some management and development capabilities. Secondly, as we discussed, there is a concession fee which is required to be paid, as we discussed in the previous slide. And finally, there is a rule where one operator can operate at max one airport from each set, which means one greenfield and one brownfield at the max. And basis these rules, we saw the first formal privatization in India in the form of construction of Hyderabad Airport and Kempagoda Airport, which is the Bangalore Airport. So Hyderabad Airport was constructed by a joint venture between the GMR Group and the Malaysian airport authorities. Whereas as far as Hyderabad is concerned, Bangalore is concerned, they were constructed by a joint venture between Siemens, L&T and Flughafen Zurich. Here, Flughafen Zurich is another international airport operator. We'll be talking about them, and they operate out of Switzerland. And similarly, we also saw a couple of brownfield projects. In the names were Mumbai Airport, which was privatized in the hands of the GVK Group in joint consortium with ACSA, where ACSA was another international airport operator from South Africa. And Delhi project was also privatized by GMR Group in joint venture with Fraport, another international airport operator. This is a picture of the financial bids that were placed for the Delhi and the Mumbai airports. So there was a bidding process where the highest bidder will get the airport will get to run the airport, that is privatize the airport, but you will have to pass the management and the development capabilities requirements. As you can see, it was GMR Fraport Group who won the Delhi airport, and the GVK ACSA Group who won the Mumbai airport privatization. But in the 2010s, the rules were tweaked a little, the bidding process. Firstly, the management and development capabilities, this requirement was removed, as well as the third point, which spoke about one operator operating at the max one airport. This rule was also removed. What was left was concession fees. But here the calculation was tweaked a little. Now concession fees will be calculated on a per passenger level. And basis these rules, another 6 airports were privatized together. These are the list of all the bidders in the very first column, and second column onwards you will see the various bids that were placed, which is in terms of rupees for passengers. I'll just name out the airports one by one. As you can see from the top row, AMD stands for Ahmedabad Airport, followed by Jaipur, Guwahati, Lucknow, Trivandrum, and finally Mangaluru Airport. As you can also see, Adani was the one to privatize all 6 airports. Also, there were few other airports that were privatized at an individual level. In 2016, we saw the second airport in Goa, which is Mopa, which was a greenfield project and privatized in the hands of GMR Group. They agreed to pay a concession fee of 37%. And in 2017, the GVK Group, via their Mumbai International Airport Limited entity, had bid for the Navi Mumbai project, and they agreed to pay another 12.6% of concession fee. Finally, in 2019, we saw the Noida Jewar Airport being privatized, again a greenfield, and the operator here was Flughafen Zurich, the Swiss airport operator we spoke about earlier. And in this case, the concession fee was 400 rupees per passenger. Say for instance, you have 1 crore passengers in the Noida airport, and that will be multiplied by 400 to give you 400 crores of concession fee to be payable. But the concession fee in the case of Noida Jewar Airport will be payable once 5 years of operations have been completed, and the number will be adjusted for inflation. Also in 2020, we saw the Adani's takeover of Mumbai International Airport Limited, which had the rights to operate the Mumbai airport as well as the Navi Mumbai airport from GVK. And now in 2026, we have a set of another 10 to 12 airports that will be privatized. Few of them are Bhubaneswar, Lucknow, Varanasi, etc. This is a list of the top few listed airport operators across the world. So I'll just name them out. Firstly, there's AENA, which is the Spanish entity we spoke about. They are the largest airport operator across the world, and they operate almost all the airports in Spain. Then there's Group ADP, this is a French airport operator. They operate all the 3 airports in Paris, and they also have significant holdings in GMR Group as well as TAV Airports. TAV Airports in this case is another airport operator based out of Turkey, which I have not mentioned in this list. Then there's Vinci Airports, another French airport operator, and they have assets across the world. Examples would be the London Gatwick Airport, which is the second largest airport in London, and few others. Then there's Fraport, the German airport operator based out of, using the, privatizing the Frankfurt airport. Then there's Flughafen Zurich we spoke about. And finally, Airport of Thailand. They handle approximately 85+% passengers of Thailand. And finally, there are a couple of Indian airport operators, as we have been speaking about. Continuing the previous table, I'll present the number of passengers handled by these operators in the latest financial year or calendar year. Uh, so there was Adani, they handled approximately 9 crore passengers, followed by GMR, another 13 crore passengers. In this list, I have also maintained the total passengers handled in total India, approximately 41 crores for context. Then there's the world's largest airport operator, AINA. They handled approximately 37 crore passengers, of which 30 crore were the Spanish passengers, that is passengers using Spanish airports, and 7 crore were other passengers who have used their other international airports. Then there's Group ADP. Although the number here is 36.4 crore passengers during the latest calendar year, only 10 crore belong to the Paris, and the remaining 26 crores are actually GMRs and TAV airports passengers, and that's simply because they hold significant chunks of their stake. Then there are numbers for the other airports that we have spoken about. So now that we have spoken about the history, I'll now speak about the business of airports. Going forward, my presentation will be divided into the following three segments: revenue, costs, and finally profitability. Broadly, in revenue, there are two segments: aeronautical segment, which is all the essential services that you need to board an aeroplane, and then there's non-aeronautical service, all your duty frees and everything, we'll speak about them. So aeronautical, as far as the tariffs are concerned, which are charged to you and the airlines, all of this is regulated by AERA. AERA is the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority, and they are the ones to regulate all the tariffs, and they are the final authority who calculate these tariffs. What this offers me is very, very high predictability, and that is because AERA calculates tariffs for the next 5 years at once. So, once every 5 years are the tariffs calculated. Recently, you might have heard Delhi's tariffs being calculated for the next 5 years, that is FY26 onwards. And on the other hand, we have the non-aeronautical segment. This is the segment where an airport gets to show its monopolistic powers. Their high profitability, driven by their pricing power, is clearly shown in this segment. And the non-aeronautical segment has significantly higher margins as compared to the regulated aeronautical segment. This is a split of the revenue between aeronautical and non-aeronautical for the various airport operators. I've arranged it in such a way that the highest dependency on non-aero is listed at the very top, and as we go down the table, we'll see a higher dependency on aeronautical segment. You'll say non-aero is only 54% for Group ADP, but once we consider the very high margins as compared to aero for the non-aero segment, the shift will completely change, and it will show around 70 to 80% of dependency towards non-aeronautical segment. So, Group ADP, Fraport and Airport of Thailand have relatively higher dependency on non-aero, approximately 54%. And AINA, on the other hand, has a 63% dependency on aeronautical segment, offering higher predictability. So we have roughly spoken about what do you mean by aeronautical segment, but there is a proper definition, an exhaustive one given by ERA. It's a 3-point definition. First point is something we have already covered, all your aeronautical services, that is access to runways, etc. The second point includes three services: cargo handling, ground handling, and fuel supply services. Of the three, ground handling and fuel supply can either be insourced, that is do it oneself, or can be outsourced. And finally, there is the air navigation service, which is compulsorily provided by Airport Authority of India. As I said, the two services, ground handling and fuel supply, can be outsourced. So broadly, I would divide aeronautical segment into the following categories as per the various customers. There's aeronautical revenue from passengers, from airlines. These two segments offer somewhere between 70 to 80% of your total aeronautical revenue. Then there's cargo and others being ground handling and fuel supply. They offer the remaining 20 to 30%. Now coming to the largest segment, aeronautical revenue from passengers. There are only two segments here: user development fee or UDF and CUD charges. I'm sure a lot of you might recollect these names from a ticket. So this is just an example ticket where CUT charges is approximately 50 rupees and user development another 200 rupees. CUT stands for Common Usage Terminal Equipment. Now say you enter the airport, you print your boarding pass, and using the boarding pass when you are actually boarding the plane, it is scanned. So those machines that are used to print and scan your boarding pass are examples of the common usage terminal equipment. Coming to the second segment, aeronautical revenue from airlines. There are four segments to it: landing, parking, X-ray charges, and then finally the aerobridge charges. These are screenshots from the latest financial statements of SpiceJet and Indigo, where you'll see entire all the four services provided in the previous slide are combined into one line item in the notes to accounts. These form approximately 6 to 10% of your total revenue from operations. Then coming to cargo, this is just a world view of how cargo looks like. So India is on the sixth position, where they handled approximately 3.5 million tons in the entire year. Uh, just for context, there's United States, and they have handled approximately 10 times the volumes handled in India. The government aims to increase this number to approximately 10 million tons by FY 30. And looking at the Indian numbers, so in 2024, the top four airports, that is in this case, which are New Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, and Mumbai, they handled approximately 80% of the total cargo tonnage handled in India. So, relatively concentrated. And finally, coming to the other two services, which are ground handling and fuel supply. So, as I said, they can be insourced or outsourced. An example of insourcing ground handling services is Fraport. So, in their Frankfurt airport, they have insourced their entire ground handling service, although at an EBITDA loss. And fuel supply is generally outsourced to your exports like BPCL. So, for example, Cochin International Airport has outsourced their fuel supply operations to BPCL. So, I have been repeatedly saying that aeronautical revenue is regulated. But how is it regulated? I will be discussing briefly the process of regulations of, of aeronautical segment, which is aero charges. So, firstly, the charges, as I said, are calculated for the next 5 years, which are called the set of 5 years is called as control periods. So, there is an input, a process, and an output. So, in the input, we have a proper cost plus model which is used to calculate your aeronautical charges. So, we will discuss briefly about the cost plus model in the next slide. As far as the process goes, so it is the airport operator who before the beginning of the control period come up with the potential aeronautical tariffs that need to be charged for the next 5 years, make a proposal and submit it to ERA. Now ERA will examine it, uh, uh, issue a consultation paper, and after a stakeholder meeting will calculate the total tariffs in the tariff order. So what will this tariff order consist of, which is the output? It will include an average revenue required for the airports to meet the cost plus model's required revenue, called as aggregate revenue required, and then this will be followed by yield per passenger. So while calculating the revenue, they will also calculate the number of passengers who will be using the specific airport for the next 5 years. Hence, the yield per passenger is nothing but ARR divided by number of passengers. And finally, using the yield per passenger, that will be divided into the various segments that we have discussed earlier, that is UDF, CUT, parking, etc. And finally, the tariff card will be printed and will be shown to the public. Coming to the cost plus model, so broadly there are three cost items: a plus, which is a profit item, and couple of adjustments. We'll go through this one by one briefly. Firstly, there's the depreciation of aeronautical fixed assets. Now, I'm sure everyone knows what depreciation is, but what do you mean by aeronautical fixed assets? They are the fixed assets which are extensively used to provide aeronautical service. An example, a simple example could be a runway. So, depreciation on the runway will be offered as a return in cost. Then there's the aeronautical operating and maintenance expense. This includes all your essential operating and maintenance expense which is required to provide aeronautical service. Then there's aeronautical taxes. which is again a pass through. So while forecasting the charges, an actual P&L will be forecasted for the next 5 years, and potential aeronautical taxes will be calculated and will be returned in the form of cost. Then they coming to the plus segment, there is a fixed return which is provided to the largest expenditure, capital expenditure, while constructing an airport, which is nothing but your aeronautical fixed assets. So how is the fixed return calculated? Fixed return is calculated using a weighted average cost of capital, uh, which depends from airport to airport. We could discuss about this after the presentation a bit more. And finally, coming to the adjustments. So there are a couple of adjustments I'll explain to you using an example. Firstly, there is the cross subsidization using non-aeronautical revenue. So say for example, using the cost plus model that we have discussed so far, the ARR comes to say 1000 rupees. Now the ERA has also forecasted that the airport will be making approximately 500 rupees from non-aeronautical segment in the next 5 years. So 30% of this 500, by the way, 30% is fixed for all the airports in India. So 30% of 500, that is 150, will be simply deducted from 1000, and the final figure of 850 rupees is something which will be offered to the airport as revenue for the next 5 years. And the second adjustment was true up, true down. So basically, true up, true down is adjusting for all the forecasting errors that might have crept into the model due to a lot of different reasons. An example could be, say I forecasted 100 passengers using the airport for the next 5 years, but the number of passengers were say 200. So that might overpay the airport. I'll explain the issue using an example. So say at the end of the first control period, where in the first control period the airport was supposed to make only 100 rupees, but the actual aeronautical income ended up being 130 rupees. Now in this case, 30 rupees is something which is over recovered and which will be deducted from the aggregate revenue required in the next 5 years. So as you can see in the next control period calculations, the forecasted ARR using the cost plus model we discussed comes to 200 rupees, but 30 rupees adjusted for some interest, and the true down effect will be 40 rupees. So 200 less 40, simply 160 rupees will be awarded as aggregate revenue required to the airport. So this was broadly the cost plus model. This is a pictographical format of the entire model, where once the ARR is calculated, as you can see here, a forecasted passenger number will also be calculated in the next 5 years. Hence, I'll be getting the yield per passenger, as you can see here in the bottom right. And the yield per passenger will be divided into the various charges that we have discussed, UDF, CUT, etc. And this is an example of an output where these are the various tariffs that are calculated for the list of 5 years, and these are the various charges, CUT, UDF, etc. This is a 10 to 12 pager document that you can easily find online, which enlists all the charges which will be charged to passengers in the next 5 years. So just reiterating a few figures where Indian airports and international airport operators have been enlisted, and the number of passengers that they have handled in the latest financial year or calendar year. So Cochin International Airport handled approximately 1 crore, whereas Delhi handled 8 crores. Hyderabad on the other hand handled approximately 3 crore passengers. Then there's Aina, who have handled approximately 31 crore passengers in the totality of approximately 40 airports handled by them in Spain. Then there's Paris airport total passengers approximately 10 crores. Similarly, there is Frankfurt and Zurich numbers as well. And these are a few metrics that one could look at while analyzing an airport. So aeronautical revenue divided by total passengers handled in the specific financial year or calendar year. This will give me aeronautical revenue per passenger. So as you can see, among the Indian names, the numbers are broadly similar, 500 to 600 rupees. The reason you'll see Delhi to be a bit low is because of the previous control period, which had a very low yield per passenger. As per the latest control period numbers that I have observed, the yield per passenger will be significantly increasing in the coming years. And on the other hand, except for Aina, there are the other 3 airport operators who earn anywhere between 2000 rupees per passenger, can be converted into euros by dividing it by 100. And then there is Aina, they have earned approximately 1000 rupees or 10 euros. which is a cap which is maintained by the Spanish government to promote the tourism there, because tourism there forms approximately 12% of total Spanish GDP. So very, very important sector for them. So now that we have discussed at length about aeronautical segment, now I'll switch to the non-aeronautical segment. Broadly, non-aero has 2 to 3 segments under it. There's retail, which forms anywhere north of 60% of non-aeronautical revenue, which also includes your duty free. Then there's real estate. So while privatizing airports, the land around the airport is also given to the airport operator. That airport operator is expected to develop the land and eventually commercialize it, as we can see in Delhi Aerocity clearly. Then there's the other segment, which includes your car parking services, your advertisement services, etc. So coming to the largest segment, retail. Broadly, business model wise, it could again either be insourced, outsourced, or somewhere in between. So an example for insourcing is Group ADP. So they have formed one subsidiary by the name of Xtime, who are responsible for providing the most luxurious non-aeronautical services to their passengers as possible. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have Aina, who have outsourced their entire retail operations to retail experts. Then somewhere in between, there's hybrid, where the airport operator has some control and while gives away some control to earn royalty. So under the hybrid, I have an example of Cochin International Airport, where they have entire control to the duty-free segment while outsourcing the remaining segments. So this is not a mall. This is the non-aeronautical segment of Dubai International Airport, and this is the London Stansted Airport's blueprint. So if you want to move from one segment of the airport to other, you will choose either of the few red paths that are allowed. And across all the paths, one thing is common: a retail outlet or hundreds of retail outlets as you move down the way, which would increase your propensity to consume at an airport. Another example is the Bali airport. They could have easily made a straight path, but they took the snake route, and there are tons of different retail outlets in your path, again increasing your propensity to consume. Coming to the real estate segment, so real estate, I've mentioned a few airports in India. What kind of real estate or what size of land was awarded to them at the time of privatization, and how much of the land is left. So, as an example, let's see Hyderabad, which is the second line item. So, they were awarded in 2008 approximately 1500 acres of land, and GMR till now has been able to use only 100 acres of land, leaving them with another 1400 acres of land to commercialize. And then there are other few examples that you could easily read. And majority of the lands are used to develop aerocities, that is commercial real estate and hotels. For instance, in Delhi, there are approximately 4,500 rooms worth of hotels already. And similar metric for the non-aeronautical segment, which is non-aero revenue divided by number of passengers handled in that specific calendar year. Again, as you'll see, among the Indian airports, the numbers are very, very similar, between 400 to 500, maybe 600 rupees. But when we look at the international airports, that is international airport operators, except for AINA, they earn relatively higher revenue, which is because of the higher duty-free income that they earn and the higher real estate in case of Zurich Airport, that I'll come to later. And then there's AINA, who earn pure royalty income, due to which they have supremely high margins, approximately 80% margins. So now that we have discussed about revenue, I'll switch gears and speak about the cost segment. So an airport incurs all your regular costs like employee benefits, finance cost being a huge chunk of it. Then there's your other expenses, etc. But one very important cost that all the Indian airports incur is the concession fees. So I'll pick few examples of the various airports that I've mentioned and what kind of concession fees do they pay. So Cochin International Airport, the first line item, pays zero concession fee, and that's simply because they did not actually enter into a concession agreement with AAI, that is Airport Authority of India. That is because at the time of construction, it was not AAI who funded the project, it was the people of Kerala and the state government, where the state government makes the concession fee via the dividend it receives. Coming down, I'll use the example of Bangalore Airport. So BIAL stands for Bangalore International Airport Limited, and they pay a relatively lower concession fee of approximately 4%. And that this low number was decided because at the time of construction, the risk was very high and the capex was even higher. That's why the numbers are relatively lower. Then there's Delhi International Airport DIAL, and they pay concession fee of as high as 46% because at the time of privatization the risks were the least. So the bidding actually went up to 46%. So out of the total 100 rupees of revenue you earn from aero as well as non-aero, 46% goes to Airport Authority of India. And finally, the example of YIAPL, the latest airport, Yamuna International Airport Private Limited, which is nothing but your Noida airport. They will be beginning their operations from approximately February 2026, and they will be paying a concession fee of as high as 400 rupees. But this will be payable after 5 years of operations are completed. So you would have observed that aeronautical and non-aeronautical revenue in totality made approximately 1200 rupees for an Indian airport, of which 400 rupees adjusted for inflation will be payable as concession fees to AAI in case of Noida airport. And again, a similar metric, cost per passenger. Again, among the Indian airports, the numbers are relatively simple with the exception of Delhi International Airport Limited. One of the key reasons being the concession fees that they pay, which is relatively higher as compared to Hyderabad and Cochin. Then coming to the international names, so AINA has managed to maintain their cost per passenger relatively low because of the very high density of their airport operations. So in the entirety of Spain, they operate approximately 46 airports, and which can easily be managed centrally. That's one reason. And secondly, the non-aeronautical segment is totally outsourced, thereby limited costs are incurred in that segment. Versus the other three international airport operators, they incur huge cost per passenger, anywhere between 2700 rupees to 3400 rupees. Now, finally coming to the profitability segment and jumping right into EBIT per passenger. So again, similar trends, wherever you saw high costs, you will see a lower EBIT per passenger as far as Indian names are concerned. So Cochin and Hyderabad broadly make 500 to 600 rupees per passenger as EBIT. I have not considered the interest cost in this segment, which could be relatively higher for Delhi and Hyderabad. Cochin is actually a net cash company, hence no interest cost for them. Now coming to the international names, except for Zurich, the other three airports incur rather similar, make rather similar EBIT per passenger. Then there's Zurich Airport, which makes relatively higher EBIT per passenger, and that is because of the real estate operations that they have, which is not related to the number of passengers that use the airport. The real estate is really well developed as compared to the all the other airports that I've mentioned in this slide, and hence a higher EBIT per passenger. And finally, coming to EBIT margins, so relatively similar explanations and trends is something that you'll observe here. And the ROC, uh, the final metric for profitability, where you'll see Cochin International Airport makes the highest ROC in this subset, approximately 22%, followed by AINA, who make approximately 17% ROC. Given that AINA is the world's largest airport operator, it is relatively commendable for AINA to maintain a 17% ROC. And finally, there is Flughafen Zurich, who make a relatively better ROC as compared to their peers of 10%. So this slide is a TLDR of sorts, where I would look at these metrics and then a few metrics that I might have missed while analyzing an airport entity. Firstly, I'll speak about, or I'll look about the regulatory setup. So if there is a concession agreement, what kind of concession fees am I required to pay, and how long is the concession tenure? So in India, Cochin International Airport has an unlimited life because there is no concession agreement. Whereas the Delhi, Hyderabad, etc. airports will, the concession agreement might get terminated after say, after the next 40 years. They might get renewed, but there is a terminal risk attached to it. Then there's AINA, who has a similar construct as compared to Cochin International Airport. Again, they own the land, hence they don't pay any concession fee. Coming to the second point, there's features of airport assets. So you will have to know who owns the land below the airport. Is it actually the airport operator, which is the case in case of Aina and Cochin International Airport, as well as the other few airport operators, international airport operators that we have discussed. But in case of the Indian airport operators, it is generally AAI who owns the land beneath the airport. Also, the capacity is something very important to be looked at. So uh, if the capacity is being breached at peak hours, this is an indication of high capex going forward, which will have a temporary strain on your FCF and your dividend yields. So the third point is really interesting, competitive intensity. Firstly, among the peers. So you might have observed for each and every privatization bidding process that took place, there were at least 5 bidders as far as India is concerned. Whereas globally, if I were to look at Thailand, so airport of Thailand handle approximately 85%, if not more, of the total Thai passengers. So this relatively insulates them from any peers of sorts. Another mode of competitive intensity is the other modes of transportation. So in India, if you want to go from say Mumbai to Pune or Mumbai to Delhi, you might choose an airplane. You could also choose a train. But in case of say Brazil, so if you want to travel from northern portion of Brazil to south Brazil, you might want to use the aeroplane because there is the Amazon rainforest in between, which will make it very difficult for you to use land routes. Coming to the fourth point, which is nature of customers. Again, a really interesting point. So there are two kinds of customers: airlines and passengers. I'm sure I don't need to explain how airlines can be disruptive for an airport's operation. But as far as passengers are concerned, this is an interesting point. So I'll tell you about Group ADP. So Group ADP had a lot of Chinese businessmen who used to use the airport pre-COVID, but and they used to spend a lot in the duty free section. But after COVID, so before COVID, approximately 70% of luxury spend of China used to happen outside China. But after COVID, this trend reversed, and the luxury spend used to started happening inside China, thereby affecting Group ADP because they had actually built an entire terminal for the Chinese passengers who reduced their visits to Group ADP's airports after COVID. And obviously, the growth outlook is something that the airports will themselves provide. In case of the Indian airports, you will find the tariff determination documents, which will provide growth outlooks for the next 5 years, which as per ERA and the airport authority. Then the fifth point is the dependency on either aero or non-aero segment. Again, using similar example of Group ADP, you might want to have an airport which is relatively equally dependent on both the segments. And finally, there's a sixth point speaks about the unit economics that we have looked at in my entire presentation, where the entire numbers are scaled using number of passengers, which can easily make them comparable among few airports. And finally, in the balance sheet analysis, you might want to pay special attention to capital allocation. So once the free cash flow is generated, an airport has an option to either expand globally or reward the shareholders. And as per their expansion policy, so say for example Group ADP again, they chose to buy stakes in TAV airports and GMR airports, which exposes them to Indian as well as Turkish economies, which might work out for them or may not. So these are a few factors that you might want to consider while analyzing an airport stock. And finally, coming to valuations. So I have included a few operational metrics that one might consider for the various airport operators, and finally the EV/EBITDA multiple that they generally trade at. And thank you for your attention.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, great presentation. You mentioned that the bidding process had changed after 2010, right? First, it was a percentage of revenues, and then it became a percentage per pax.
No,
Sorry, revenue per
rupees
pax.
per pax.
Rupees per pax. Now, in both the models, the cost plus thing goes in that, is it?
Yes, calculation remains the same.
So in the second, where it's a fixed fee per pax, is it not the non-aero part also gets into the calculations to get it to get the metrics out, Or
No, so in your calculation, only the aeronautical profit and loss statement will be considered, and return on only your aeronautical fixed assets will be considered.
sure.
This will be subsidized by 30% of non-aeronautical revenue.
In both the
And
models.
one thing, yes, both the models, and one thing to consider is that your concession fee will not enter into the model, which is obvious. Otherwise, it would everyone would bid 100% of revenue as concession fee.
True, true. So now when you have this model of control period in all across all the airports, how relevant is your P&L then? Because your P&L, there would be a spillover of, so for example, if you overestimate the passengers in one control period, right? So in that case, you will be over reporting your revenues and under reporting your over reporting your income in the first control period and under reporting in the subsequent control period, right? So in that case, your P&L is really relevant to when you look at the valuation metrics.
So as far as your aeronautical revenue is concerned, that might be the case. But in case of your non-aero segment, that wouldn't be the case. So for example, if from 100 you are getting 200 passengers, then you will get 100% growth in your non-aeronautical segment, which is generally larger for all the airports given the higher profitability margin. So if you would split your EBIT, for example, between aero and non-aero, even for ANA, the EBIT from the non-aeronautical segment is always north of 50%, somewhere around 60-ish%. So you might actually make more money if you have more passengers. Although the aeronautical chunk of it will get reimbursed in the next control period. And this is only for Indian airports. Globally, the model differs.
But it's largely 50-50 when we saw aero and non-aero per pax.
Revenue.
Revenue.
Yes.
So broadly it's 50-50, right?
Revenue
So-
is, yes, 50-50, yes.
Okay.
I just one question. Globally, if you look at slots, for example, there are slot sales which happen. If you look at Heathrow, for example, they're quite expensive. So,
Okay. Yes.
yes, right?
Yes.
So does that accrue to the airports, or is it between airlines that slot sales happen?
So the airport slot sales generally do not happen in India. It's not allowed in India. As far as Heathrow is concerned, actually, I'm not aware of to who makes that money. As in who gets the money from
Because
slot
that's
sales.
like a huge number globally.
Yes. Qatar Airways actually bid extremely high for the 8 a.m. slot. Yes.
Correct, because prime slots, especially in the larger airports, it's very difficult to get.
Yes.
Hi, very good presentation. I just want to know between aero and non-aero revenue, you are saying non-aero has a higher margin. Okay, what is, can you throw some light on whether, suppose, if both the revenues are 50-50, what is the kind of additional margin that non-aero revenue enjoys over aero revenue?
Aeronautical revenue, the margins are really controlled by the regulator. So, as I said, the EBIT split would be 30-70, but the revenue split is only 50-50. So, you might approximately double margins you could consider. Because in case of if you want to eat in an airport, everything will be expensive. And that's simply because the airport makes their money from the non-aeronautical segment. And that's why you will see approximately double, at least double margins. In some cases 50 plus margins.
Okay, so that is the reason we see more and more airport offering newer and newer facilities.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. So one question I had is, like most airports in India, the construction of the airport and the facilities happens prior to selecting the operator, right?
No. So the operator in case of say Navi Mumbai was decided it would be Flughafen Zurich in 2019, but the construction went on till recent period and now it will open. So operators are generally decided. They will be the one who will be funding with AAI. So a JV will be formed and majority of the stake will be held by the operator. So in case of Bangalore, it was L&T, Siemens, and Flughafen Zurich. So these guys held approximately 74%, if I'm not wrong, and the remaining 26% was held by actually the state government as well as AAI, if I'm not wrong. So here the capex will also be
The
paid
capex
to
is also by the operator only.
Yes, yes.
And then the concession period is basically what, that's 60 years or 50 years or 60 years, as you
Yes.
said. And the concession fee is paid every year.
Yes.
But now it's as per passenger,
Per passenger.
per unit economics is per passenger now.
Yes.
Understood. Thanks.
Also, the reason why concession fee differs, so for example, Bangalore had a very low concession fee, 4% only, because the capex was to be done for constructing, whereas Delhi, you'll see construction fees higher because a lot of them bid as high as 46% because the airport was already in place. What you had to do was operate and develop a few items here and there. I mean, obviously, that would be substantial, but not as substantial as Bangalore. Yes, so
Right in the city.
yes, correct. So the difference between Delhi and Mumbai, you'll see Mumbai is paying 38% and Delhi is paying 46. So at that time there was a consultant report where it's basically said that Delhi is relatively safer than Mumbai. Hence people bid more for Delhi.
Sure.
And which is visible.
So this cost plus model is followed everywhere, or is it just something specific to India?
So few variations here and there, but broadly everywhere your tariffs are regulated using this cost plus model only.
So there's a tendency to overestimate by a operator these capex, and so as to get a better buck for their investment, something like that, right?
So there are all the documents are publicly available, which also includes all your discussions. So when I was going through it, there was a tendency of these guys overestimating their expenses or underestimating non-aeronautical revenue, so that your subsidization will be very low. But then the airport authority, on the other hand, tried to underestimate the expenses, etc. There was a tussle between them, and they
There were
agreed.
universal charges which the AI has for all the airports. Like these are the metrics, like cost per kilometer of runway, or maybe the area of construction for handling the passengers. There are no universal costs that they have, is it?
No, because every airport differs, the size differs. So your metropolitan airports will be significantly larger. So your costs will actually really differ, and they actually use real experience and the quotations which are provided by the people. So say for example, ground handling generally outsourced, it is provided by Celebi among other players. So Celebi gives them a quotation ki we'll be charging this much. So using those quotations, I can easily calculate the costs which might get incurred, and anything which differs will be paid back to you or will be taken away from you in the true up true down, adjusted for interest.
Sure.
Yeah. Can you throw light on the government policy? Is there a standard government policy format that now like earlier times you said the concession rate was different, right? But now is there a government policy that has a framework around how you bid or how you tender this whole airport business?
Earlier, so the majority of the rules were discussed as far as bidding is concerned. So your management and development capabilities were tested earlier, and dependency was also reduced as far as possible. But now the key driver is the bids you place. So higher you bid, the odds of you winning the privatization project will significantly increase.
So in the case recent times Adani has been winning. So the dynamics is that he's pricing it aggressively on the upper side, is it?
That was the case with the 6 airports that we observed, but there is a counterpoint to it. In case of Noida, Adani and GMR also participated. They had placed a bids of somewhere between 360 to 350 rupees per passenger. But then we saw a competition from international airport operators in the form of Flughafen Zurich. So they ended up winning the airport by paying 400 rupees per passenger. So you never know who might beat Adani as well.
Okay, thanks.
Recently, there was this press news about the non-aeronautical revenues and how it's reached the litigation in the Supreme Court about charging revenues from passengers on a retrospective basis. It just came about a week back.
Yes.
So, could you throw some light on it? And
So this was very specific to Delhi and Mumbai. So I actually am not really well versed with the entire case. But what it meant was, so in 2000, it was 2008 when Airport Economic Regulatory Authority was formed in the first place. But the privatization of Delhi and Mumbai was in place in 2004. So the period of 4 years, there was some calculation error, which actually had a grave impact on the opening numbers from where ERA started calculating the tariffs. And that was the reason why you'll see the huge amounts that might get charged, may or may not get charged as per the decisions that will be made by the authorities. So it was mainly a huge calculation difference of
Only for the period between 4 to 8.
mainly between 4 to 8, yes. But because the capex was done, majority of the capex was already done, plus the incremental capex was also done in the 4 years.
Okay, and second question is there a kind of a return on equity that is implicit in the bidding that happens? I mean, like it happens in the case of utilities.
So the return on equity here, the calculation is return on investment. As you will see in the cost plus section, the plus section is reserved for the profits. So your ROI will be calculated using the weighted average cost that I mentioned, which is basically a weighted average between your cost of equity and your cost of debt, depending on how your capital structure looks like. And your main investment is your fixed assets, which will be multiplied, the FROI, which is fixed rate of return, will be multiplied to your regulatory asset base, and that will be your profits for the year. And the returns on working capital is also offered. So the government expects you to fund your working capital using working capital loans, and the interest on working capital loans will be returned to you in the aeronautical operating and maintenance segment. So you will get your capital employed return via the cost plus model only, and the remaining you will earn via non aeronautical. That's what is expected.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we are just generally talking about the big airports in India, right?
Yes.
So what about the other airports? Because the Udan scheme and all of this, there is capex going on any which ways, right? So who means is there bidding for those airports also, or the government is taking over?
So by default, it is AAI who is running the existing airports. Going forward, greenfields will be privatized. Some of them will be funded by AAI, and some will be privatized. So as I mentioned, there are a list of 10, 12 airports that have been finalized, and they will be privatized in, I think, in the next year going forward. So it includes your tier 2 cities like Varanasi, Bhubaneswar, etc. So gradually things will get privatized and capex will be divided between the private parties and government. The key objective behind privatizing greenfield projects, privatizing in the first place, is to reduce the capex burden from AAI or any government for that matter.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So one last question. Is there any mechanism by which government calculates per user charges? Because recently when they have increased the charges,
Hmm.
there is a lot of noise
Yes.
that they have increased it insanely and all that. So
The key.
can you throw some light on that?
Yes, I'll just walk you through the cost plus model again, where I'll tell you. So in this segment, one of the largest. Oh, sorry. In this segment, one of the largest items is actually aeronautical fixed assets and the depreciation on it. So all your capex, which is done, say for example, you might have read Terminal 3 was constructed in the recent 5 years in Delhi. So in case of terminals and in case of your common assets, terminal offers both non-aeronautical in the form of your duty frees and aeronautical in the form of your path towards the airplane. So your terminal is actually divided between the aeronautical segment and non-aeronautical segment, and depreciation on the aeronautical segment will be offered to you in the cost segment. So this might push your cost plus revenues up, and all the capex that is done is after the approval of ERA. So all in all, it is everyone to who have participated in the incremental tariffs that we face. Yes, but it is somewhat subsidized by the non-aeronautical segment as well.
Any questions from Zoom audience?
Okay. Thank you, Shantanu.
This initiative is undertaken solely with the objective of educating people at large about financial concepts, sectoral knowledge, and related matters. It is intended only for general awareness and learning purposes and should not be construed as advice, recommendation, or solicitation to buy, sell, or hold any securities or financial instruments. The information and views expressed are based on current understanding and are subject to change over time with evolving market conditions, regulatory developments, and other factors. The presenter or the company they are associated with may have existing exposure or professional knowledge relating to the sectors, themes, or concepts discussed. This does not, however, constitute a recommendation or endorsement. Participants and readers are strongly encouraged to exercise their own judgment and seek professional guidance before making any financial or related decisions. This initiative should be viewed purely from an educational perspective and nothing else.